Hey, Carol, have you noticed that poets love October?
I have noticed you have been sending me so many great quotes about October and fall this month.
I have, and I can see why poets love October.
Yeah, I can too. I mean, things slow down in October, even though we're hurtling towards the end of the year.
Hmm.
The air is softer, trees are letting go of leaves. It reminds us we ought to be letting go of some stuff too.
Yep, that could be part of it. And we can ponder that more as we start this episode. So get us started.
I will. Welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana, where I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about a third of an acre.
And I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden an acre and a half out of 7.5 acres out in the country.
We call ourselves garden evangelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening. We want others to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. So,
Hi, Dee.
what's up in your garden world? Hi, Carol.
Well, we should say we recorded on Sunday for this week, and now it's Thursday, which is as early as we've ever recorded. So if we don't have like
Back to, yeah.
huge laundry list of stuff, I did mow on Monday when it got dry enough, and you will
Uh-huh.
be happy to know. Then I went back and I cut the seed heads off the northern sea oats. So take that off your worry list.
Yay. I was just, I was just sitting worrying about it. Not
I
really.
bet you
I have my
were.
own issues.
I finally yesterday took cuttings off the African blue basil and I thought, ooh, I've waited a little bit long. These are getting a little bit tough, but I got what I think are 8 good cuttings. I just need one to make it, as we say. I also got some cuttings off the Swedish ivy that my sister gave me 20 years ago and then another one called lemon twist. I took just the little tips because they have big leaves. And I thought I just did 4 of each of those. I just want to overwinter those so that maybe I could plant those in containers and hanging baskets for the spring. I also went to the greenhouse. I went to a garden center and I went to a
Yeah.
bookstore. I've done a lot in 4 days. How about your garden, Dee?
Okay. So I have lemon twist, or I have had it in the past. I think I still have it. Yeah, I do in my front pots. And that reminds me, I'll take some cuttings of it. I also have the one that is not lemon twist, but the white one.
The
What is
white
that one?
variegated
Yeah, I
Swedish
have the
ivy.
white
Yeah,
variegated. Yeah, I have that one. I don't know what it's called. Probably variegata.
probably, probably.
Anyway, I have tons of it. I have a big pot of it. I have some that grew in a crack in the sidewalk because isn't it a plectranthus? Aren't they
Yeah, they're
plectranthus?
planktranthus. Yes,
Yeah, which
yes.
you know what plectranthus means?
Roots easily? I don't know.
Yeah, I'll grow anywhere. That's my
It.
definition.
I think they are in the mint family. We'll grow anywhere. Give us a place to put
We
down
have
some
no
roots.
problem. No, that's funny.
We should
Funny.
all be like the Plectranthus. Just be
Just
anywhere.
just be adaptable. Okay, so in my garden, things have slowed down some. I'm really tired of working in it, and I'm about at the point where I'm like, you know what? It has that look of October decay, and that's what the garden looks like in October, and that's what Lindvater is going to see. And so I'm still mulching, and I'm still fighting armadillos. Which as soon as I put the mulch in, they dig it up and try to find the grubs. I should not have any grubs next year. There
Oh,
should
I
be
couldn't imagine
no
not.
Japanese beetles, nothing. I've also kind of quit watering it much because the drier the soil, the less they like to dig in it, that sort of thing. So I accidentally, okay, my husband is out of town and he left these stupid cages up everywhere. And yesterday I forgot that he had this one cage in this one spot because he's moved them around. And I didn't even know how many cages there were. And there was a baby possum in it. And I
Oh,
was
how
like,
cute.
oh, poor little baby possum. Well, they're cute until they snarl at you. I walked up and I thought, oh no, is it dead? And I saw one ear twitch because they do play possum. They
Right.
really, really do. They
They do
pretend they're
play
dead.
possum.
So I walked up to it and I said, hey, little fella. And it looks up at me and snarls at me. And I said, my, those are some big teeth you have. But I But I just said, hey, I'm going to let you out of here. So it was just a comedy of errors, me trying to let that little thing out. And it probably
Yes.
finally, the stupid little creature crawled out of the deal and then crawled immediately underneath some blocks. And I said, hey there, I'm sorry. It's not my fault. And I
Blame
closed
Bill.
down that cage. We're going to blame Bill. In fact, I'm closing down all the cages because I don't want to catch anything while he's gone. I don't
Yeah.
want to deal with it.
I've caught a rabbit in a
So
cage and it was just a comedy of errors because once I caught it, I'm like, I don't have any place to take it. It was pouring down rain and me getting that thing out of there and it just thumping along. What else in your garden?
it's not pretty. Okay, so it's supposed to be 92 today, by the way. That's way too
Boo.
hot. Hot for October. But the mornings are nice and cool. So it's starting to show that, basically right now we're really dry. And so the air is dry too. So we're kind of acting like a desert climate where it gets warm in the day and then at night it cools way down. But that
Uh-huh.
gives everybody, a little bit of a break, all the plants. And what else was I going to say about that? It's
You
supposed to
were
be
going to
really
say,
full drought. We're going to have drought and it's going to be hot and dry. So the weather forecast doesn't look too good and everybody needs to be fire aware. That's all.
exactly.
Let's play favorites. You go first.
So my favorite this week is going to be the little autumn crocuses. The first ones have shown up out front. They're so sweet and they remind me of spring. They are a few weeks early, I think, in the front because the back ones where I have a bunch that have been multiplying, I haven't seen those
Mm-hmm.
yet. I'm thinking, I hope this dry spell didn't wipe them out, but it should not have. Anyway, that's my favorite, the autumn
Aren't
crocuses.
they aren't they Mediterranean or
Yes,
something?
they are, which is why I think they're just fine.
They're fine. They just haven't. They'll come back when they're ready. I had the asters. My garden's full of asters. They're starting to bloom. Bluebird has just started. The heath asters have been blooming for about a week. And so it should look really pretty for next Thursday when Linda comes. We'll see.
Very
So,
nice.
question of the week.
The question of the week, you got this question, and somebody sent you a text, and I'll read the text, and then you can answer it.
Okay.
Your zinnias always look so full. When I do mine from seed, I follow the instructions on the seed packet for spacing, but when they come up, it's so spread apart and thin, and I hardly get any flowers. I feel like just loading the seeds in next year so they'll be fuller and more dense, but I don't want to waste them. Any tips from Zone 6 MA?
Which is Massachusetts, right?
I
In
think
MA,
so.
Massachusetts, and
I
Maine
think
is
so.
ME. I think so.
And Maryland is
Okay,
MD.
so I'll just tell you what I said back, which is, and she gave me the idea for a reel, and I did do it on Oklahoma salmon. Things are going to be different in Massachusetts than they are in Oklahoma, somewhat, but I spaced them 4 to 6 inches apart. So it's not exactly like the seed packet. And I pinch them when they're little. So when they get about 2, 3 inches tall, I pinch them down to a set of leaves, usually the second set of leaves, true
Uh-huh.
leaves, not the cotyledon. And so when I do that, it helps them branch out. And then I continue to deadhead them down to the first or second set of leaves to get them to get bigger and bigger and branch out. Because as we know with plants, usually if you cut them down, they'll send up 2 more branches, 2 more stems or sides of stems. So it helps them to branch better. And Carol's looking out her window. Something must be going on.
I was looking to see if the trash man came.
I hope it came
Uh-oh.
here. They
Well, I
come
don't know if
early
it's
here. I'm sure
trash
they
or
do.
recycling.
Yeah, we don't have recycling out where I live, out in the boondocks. But anyway, so that's a way you can make them fuller. You can also start them indoors. But the secret really is to keep pinching them back. When I did the reel, a couple of people came in and said, hey, that plant doesn't look like you staked it at all. And I didn't. It's in a really good spot, has lots of room to do its thing, and it's happy as a clam. But I don't stake the ones that are in the cutting garden. What I do is I put down some netting, and
Right.
we'll link to the netting from Amazon. It'll be an affiliate link, but it's great netting. And actually I learned about it from Teresa Byington, who does Rose Chat.
Yes. And so our friend in Massachusetts, if she's growing flowers and stuff, I hope she has The Art of Flower Gardening by Matt Mattis, our friend in Massachusetts.
He knows a lot about flower gardening. Yep.
Yes. So we'll put a link to his book as well. That might help her.
It might help her because, and I really do think that's one of the best books he's written.
Yeah.
So
Now, I say that, and it's not right at hand. So I don't know. Did he write about zinnias? I'm assuming that he did.
I don't know if he did or not, but most of this advice holds pretty true. But I mean, on those seed packets, anytime on a seed packet, it is telling you the optimal spacing, right? Well, I don't really believe in optimal spacing. I believe in
No,
spacing however the heck I want. And I also
exactly.
believe in green mulch. And green mulch means that you put certain plants together, especially the kind of bullies of the plant world when they're perennials, put them close together because then they shade out weeds and it makes your life easier. With annuals, it's a little bit different. All they want to do is produce seed. And that's one of the reasons that their heads flop too. I went
Right.
outside and I noticed that on that zinnia, that Oklahoma salmon one by itself, that its heads are starting to flop. Cut those off. The reason it's doing that is because it's trying to set seed. Unless, of course, you're going to save seeds from your zinnias, which I'm only saving seeds this year from my binary giant deep reds. Well,
There you go.
and I take it back. I'm also saving that Tide Pool series, but that's it.
All right. Well, I'm going to do a quote and we're going to go into the flower topic.
Flower.
I remember it as October days are always remembered. Cloudless, maple flavored, the air gold and so clean it quivers. Leaf Enger.
And it came from a book that you and I are both reading called Peace Like a River, which I'm almost finished because my book club's on Saturday. And I found that quote when I was reading it, and I just thought, oh, it's perfect. And it's a beautiful book.
I bought the book at the bookstore because you recommended it. And that author has been to Franklin where the bookstore is. And they had a bunch of signed copies. And so I tease you with sending you a picture. It says autographed copy. And like, should I get it?
I didn't even realize that's what you were doing. I was driving when you sent that to me, and I glanced at it when I got to my location. Of course, you're teasing me. Yes, you should get it. I'm glad you did.
And I
it's
did.
Really good.
I haven't started reading it, but I will.
I'm glad mine's not signed because I've been reading it in the bathtub, and I wouldn't be able to do that. So
now the reason I have to was looking at the trash man is before we get to our flower topic, which is coming up. With the storms and stuff that came here Thursday, Friday, my patio umbrella was probably really thin at the top where the sun's been beating on it. And so when I looked out Friday morning, all the material had fallen down off the umbrella, was laying on the table. And so I had to take the umbrella part, I put it in the trash in the two parts, and they stuck out. And I went thinking horrible thoughts like, if he flips that and then that pole gets to the windshield or something, is this going to be okay? And so that's why I'm like, did it go okay? Did it go okay? It did.
It went okay. Good. I'm glad to hear it. So our flower topic actually comes, it's Silphiums, and it comes from a C. Colston Burrell article in August, September 2001 of The Gardener, which is turning out to be my very favorite gardening magazine of all time. We know Cole Burrell. He's also written a beautiful book on hellebores. He's probably written a bunch of other stuff too, but I have his book on hellebores, and hellebores have even changed since he wrote it, but he really researches his article. And so you said when you saw the article, you thought,
I thought, well, first of all, let me clarify. I don't think I know Colston
you
Burrell.
don't know Cole? Oh, I
No.
do.
Okay.
He goes by Cole. He's a very nice man and very smart man. So,
well, I didn't think I had any Silphiums, and I thought, okay, whatever, Dee, if that's what you want to talk about. Just looks like a bunch of yellow composite flowers. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I have a Silphium. I have Silphium perfoliatum, the cup plant, which is really too big for where I have it.
Let's just be honest.
Beautiful.
Cup plant is too big for anywhere. Like even here, I had to move it from my front flower beds that face the street over here up against the wall where it just has taken over its space. It gets 8 feet tall, and
well, mine is getting shaded a bit more than when I first planted it. And I blame the art museum used to have a native plant sale or basic nursery plant sale, and I bought, it's like in a little quart container. It looks so innocent, but those
Mhm.
are huge. They have the cup plant has a square stem, and so don't think that every square stem is in the mint family. It's
No,
not.
sometimes they're in the Helianthiae family,
Yes. So anyway,
which is what these are.
yeah. And it has square stems. It has huge leaves. And then
Mhm.
where at the leaf axil, water collects there. And that's why they call it cup plant, because birds, I'm assuming other insects,
Yeah,
and
insects.
butter,
Yeah,
they can drink out of that. So that's
exactly.
what's really cool about it. That's the one
It's
I
a cool
have.
plant. And it is a pollinator magnet, but it is a big plant, a big plant. And it's beautiful. And then you also have compass plant, as do I. And
No,
compass, you
I
don't
don't
have
have
compass
it.
plant? Oh, I
No.
do. It's up in my upper pasture. And it is another Silphium. There are a bunch of them. And he lists them. And in fact, he gives you a little
Gets you
like
a design to use
yeah, a
them in
little
a garden.
design to use them. And it's a very much a prairie design. I had this open to Silphiums and then I closed
Yeah.
it.
So you got to love an article where they bring up William Robinson, the English gardener who wrote The Wild Gardener, and
Yeah.
then Aldo Leopold. He has information about him where he had the Silphium lanceolatium.
Yep.
He says he wrote that, and this is Leopold. First became a personality to me when I tried to dig one up to move to my farm. After half an hour of hot, grimy labor, the root was still enlarging like a great sphere vertical sweet potato. As far as I know, that Silphium root went clear through to bedrock. And then it says there's a prairie ecologist, J.E. Weaver, has documented roots more than 15 feet deep. And that's on lanceolatum, which is that's the compass plant,
Yes,
right?
compass plant. It has very and there's been a deal going around online showing the bot underneath the prairie, so the prairie top and then the roots of the prairie. And that's what that reminds me of because the roots of the prairie, most of those plants have very long, deep roots because the prairie has times of flooding and times of no water at all. And they have to be able to pull from the deep, deep, deep soil. And so, and usually they grow in very poor soil too. So I'm not at all surprised. I've never tried to move a compass plant and I don't intend to.
Well, yeah. Now, that's the thing about my cup plant. And it says in here, and I can't find it exactly, the cup
I
plant
did
has
read it.
more of fibrous roots. It doesn't have the
Mm-mm.
deep taproot of the compass plant.
No, it
But
doesn't, but they are big old fibrous roots. I mean, I
yeah,
moved
I was going
one.
to say it is because I much more, I'll say, religious about deadheading the cup flat plant than I am those northern sea oats, even though both could be a big mess. Because I don't want those to just show up anywhere. And then by the time I figure out what it is or see it, it's sewed in there. So I
I'm
just
not
keep
going to
this
move it
one
again.
clump, and it likes to spread about a little bit. And I just cut it back and try to keep it contained.
Yeah,
Now the one thing he said about cup plant is that it likes to be more wet. And
right. So I put it in a
and
little bit wetter area this time.
and mine is just in my garden. And I'll tell you what, when it dried out pretty quick in August when we didn't get any rain, August, September. It
Yeah.
got pretty crusty.
It does. It gets crusty, but you know what? It'll come back next year. It'll be fine.
It will
So
be fine.
I love what he said about silphiums. He said plants are now rare outside of preserves and gardens, but are still found occasionally on dry to moist black soil prairies and savannas from Ohio and Minnesota south to Alabama and Oklahoma.
Yes.
And so, anyway, silphiums are cool plants. Just give them lots of room, and they're just pretty cool. In the bottom, he has this little box, the ABCs of DYCs.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that word because then we'd have to say we cuss. So it's darn yellow composites,
Yes.
and yeah, it's just
There's a lot of them out there.
there's
And
a. I
these
mean, most of them are most flowers that bees and everybody go to in nature. Almost all of them are yellow and composite flowers.
Yeah, and the article has some really nice and we keep talking about this magazine and how beautiful it is, and our
It
listeners
is.
are like, you can't get those, so stop talking about it. I will
Sorry.
say they have, I'll call them watercolors of all the plants,
Yeah, they're
and
beautiful.
so they all have similar flowers. They basically yellow composite flowers, and I guess without seeing the leaves, and you would not know one from the other if you just had the flowers.
No,
I think you'd be
and
hard
maybe
pressed to say,
size. Yeah, I mean, if you
yeah,
just handed me a yellow composite flower, I don't. I mean, I would
that's
be
a
hard
silphium.
pressed. Yeah, I'd
Nobody.
be really well. Even like I'm thinking about verbena, one of the verbenas that I have in my garden, which I wish I didn't because it reseeds everywhere. It's got that same look too, even though it's a verbena. So there you
Yeah.
go.
Okay, Dee, that's enough of silphiums. Let's do a quote and talk about vegetable gardening.
Two things stand like stone: kindness in another's trouble, courage in your own. Adam Lindsay Gordon. And we certainly know this week is, all the news is about Georgia and North Carolina
Oh,
and a little bit of
yes.
Florida. And wow, kindness to others is all that matters right now. All right, vegetables. Again, we are going to talk about the garden magazine.
So we're in the same issue, but I said, what should we talk about for the vegetable garden? Because when it gets into fall, winter, we kind of like, what
Run out of
vegetable haven't we
ideas.
talked about? So this is a really good article on how to predict frost in your garden. And so the article title is First Frost on the Horizon, Chill Out. And it is by a gentleman named Elliot Tozer. And I don't know where he's at, but it's really got some good information we ought to go through with our listeners to know how do you know if there's going to be frost in your garden, because like you probably get the Oklahoma City weather reports, which
But
really
that
don't
doesn't
tell you
count.
what's going to happen at your garden. And I get the
Heck no.
Indianapolis weather reports, and I'll tell you that my friends on the north side of Indianapolis are going to have different weather than I might have on the south side, but the weather report for all of us is the same.
Right. And so that comes down to microclimates and why they matter for so many
Yes.
reasons,
And
right?
so, yeah, local matters when it comes to frost. It's where is your garden, what's around it, and what have you planted? And he talks about how if you have if you have a lot of trees around you,
Yep.
so those
And water.
trees and water, two things that will trap heat and then release heat at night. And so you are less likely to have a frost than somebody that's sitting out in the middle of the open, so to
Yeah,
speak.
definitely. Definitely. And my prairie meadow sits up on the hill up in my upper pasture. And so it is up higher and then it slopes down. My land slopes down to the water. And by doing that, I have pockets of frost maybe more often in my back garden before I do up in my upper pasture because it used to be surrounded by trees. They all burned up, but which I showed in a couple of my stories recently.
And then the other thing that and these are just reminders, which I think people know, but it's good to be reminded.
I think
If
it's
you
good
have
to
a
be
really
reminded.
clear day and the temperatures are going to fall down towards that frost mark, that clear day means the heat that got absorbed during the day, nothing stops it from going right up into the atmosphere. So you are probably going to have a chance of frost. Where if it's cloudy, those clouds, believe it or not, bounces back that heat.
Yeah, it's like a blanket. Clouds are like a
Yes,
blanket over the land. So when you get a big fierce storm come through here, another thing to remember is, and this is a little after you have your first frost, but if you have a big storm come in, it dumps a bunch of snow, that really makes the temperatures colder. However, that snow protects your plants, which
it
is another
does.
thing.
It
And
does.
that's one of the reasons that Oklahoma has a lot of stuff dry up and heave out of the soil is A, we don't get a lot of snow most years, and B, we have a lot of heaving because of these temperature changes in the soil. That's why you have to go take your foot and press down on your heucheras, your coral
Yeah.
bells. Coral bells like to commit suicide in the winter. So,
The other thing he says about frost is the darker your soil is, the more it absorbs heat during the day. And so he would suggest that light colored mulches on top of soil, that's doing nothing to help that soil absorb heat during the day. And so he would advise against that. Good dark soil helps to absorb heat. And so you may ward off a frost. If you're getting close but not there, you might not have
Uh-huh.
frost because of your soil. And then
So say, oh, go ahead.
well, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so if you see a frost coming, what should you do? What does he tell us to do?
Well, if you see a frost coming, he says, look for the signs. Do you have cloud cover? Do you have dark soil? Do you have a chance of skirting by one that's real close? Now, if it's going to go down into the upper 20s, you're done. But you
Yeah.
can cover things. And again, this is that reminder when you are covering, it is to cover so that the radiant heat comes up, bounces against the cover, and warms those plants by a few degrees, which may be enough to stave off frost. So
So
if
you
you're
need to
in,
cover all the way to the ground. You can't just put
yes,
something on top of your plants.
no,
Like, say, climbing roses. This isn't vegetable, but it's the first thing I think of. In the spring, when we see that a light freeze or a frost is coming, people often wrap up their plants, right? The stuff that
yes,
they put out that shouldn't be out yet, or the stuff that's budded out. There's a lot of talk about that in the spring. Well, that doesn't do you any good if you don't put things all the way to the ground, your
right. And
covers,
so
because they've got to pull up the heat.
he says in this article that floating row covers, which is that spun stuff that you can buy, is easy to apply, but only provides 2 to 3 degrees of protection. So again, if you're going down to like 27, 28, you're
Uh-huh.
probably still going to get frost under that floating row cover. But he said bed sheets, which are thicker, will
They can
give
do
you about
better,
5 degrees of protection.
which I hadn't thought about, but that's really true.
And
So,
then if you have a polyethylene tunnel, that provides some help. And you want to make sure it's all covered and that you cover it before sunset, because once the sun sets, the radiant heat is going to go out.
right, because you want to try to trap that heat and bring it up. And I actually do have row covers for my Vago beds, and I'm going to see how well that works because I have the row covers anyway. And I decided to plant a bunch of vegetables this year. So we'll see what
Right.
happens.
And so
And
again, we're
then,
talking about vegetable gardening. And so that's where, if I was growing fall vegetables, that's where like a frost, and then I can see that the next 10 days, there's not likelihood of frost. That's where
yeah.
it would be worth covering because you can get a little bit of extra time out of your
Mhm.
vegetable garden by protecting from that really early frost that doesn't have. But if it's like,
Which,
okay, it's going to be cold for the forever now, you're done.
yeah, you're done. Once that happens, you're done. You can put them in cold frames and cover up, close the cold frames in Oklahoma, and they'll do okay. You can harvest for a long time, but I also want to point out we're supposed to be in the 90s all week, so don't cover them now. You'll just fry
Oh
things.
no. Oh no. The other thing he says is if you forget to cover and you
Yeah.
wake up and it's like 4 o'clock in the morning and you realize that you're going to have frost, you can turn on a sprinkler and water does let off some heat as it freezes. And so that can sometimes save your crop from, this like one-off freeze.
Are you going to do that though?
No, I'm not, but I
I'm
will
not
tell you that
either.
I learned that in college. They
It's
taught us that
true.
that was
Yeah,
if I was a
and they,
production vegetable farmer and
I
it's
would.
like that meant I would have a crop for Saturday's farmers market or whatever, I would do that. But
Sure.
Carol's not doing that.
Well, and also, if you're a production farmer, you're going to have low tunnels and all your stuff's going to be buttoned up in low tunnels. So, probably not going to happen to you. But if you're just determined to extend that season, I guess you could do that. But here's the deal, let those hoses drain out and then disconnect them just in case you get a 20-degree night,
Yeah.
because that'll cause a mess. I've done it before. And
I've heard of
so
the
there you
water
go.
method being used more often in spring when there's a late frost and people didn't
Yes.
see it coming and then they're watering. And it is true that if you water the plant really well, it has a better chance of surviving.
That's why they tell you before a freeze comes, or like like in the spring, or even now, if you're getting frost, water everything beforehand. It helps the plants kind of get it together. So there you go. I think that's enough about this topic.
I think it is too, but anyway, it's coming and it's coming sooner for me, but we're going to be in the 80s in a couple of days, so it's not going to be for a
Yeah.
while.
We're going to be hot for a while, and then we'll see what happens in November. Probably the bottom of the bucket will just drop out one night because that happens to us a lot. We live in the prairie.
All right, I'm going to do a quote for the bookshelf. There are two perfumes to a book. If a book is new, it smells great. If a book is old, it smells even better. It smells like ancient Egypt. A book has got to smell, and that is Ray Bradbury. And the question I have for Ray Bradbury is, how do you know what ancient Egypt smells like?
He has a great imagination. That's why.
Yeah.
My favorite author. I absolutely love him.
I was going to say, I was talking to an author friend, and she said Ray Bradbury's papers and his typewriter and everything is right up the road at Indiana University in Indianapolis.
You need to make a field trip. You need to make a field trip and then take pictures for me. He really is one of my heroes as a writer. The bookshelf this week it was sent to us, and it is Insect Epiphany: How Our Six-Legged Allies Shape Human Culture. And it's by Barrett Klein. And that ought to tell you how serious this book is.
Yes. Barrett Klein is an entomologist. And so and this is from the blurb about the book, a buzzworthy exploration of the many ways insects have affected human society, history, and culture. Mm-hmm. And so this is not a trivial book. And so I'm holding it up so you can see this is a thick old book. He has done his homework, and there are pictures galore in this thing, tons of pictures. And he's got chapters on pretty much anything you'd want to know about insects and people together. And so there's a chapter on the symbiosis, he calls it, which is working together. We get silk, wax, honey, lacquer, color, paper, chitin, and venom and poison from insects.
Yeah, all these things.
And then he's got using insect bodies, and we'll skip that food one. I'm not eating insects. Medicine, light, art, making them, the exoskeleton envy. And that chapter is kind of interesting because, an insect is protected from the outside, unlike people who are not protected from the outside. And so we have to put on exoskeletons. You think about the Knights of England and everything, putting on their armor.
Or like when we go up in space and they have to wear space suits. That's like an exoskeleton. Yeah. I mean, this book is, so I think I've said before that I was terrified of insects when I started gardening. I really was. People especially flying and stinging insects. And it was only by learning about the insects that I made myself not so afraid of them. But I have to admit that this book creeps me out a little bit. The art with insects section, where people use insects in their art. I kind of feel sorry for the insects, although I don't know why. Probably the same reason I felt sorry for the little possum. I am tenderhearted. But, and there's like a chandelier in here that was made with the bodies of a beetle that's beautiful. I think the chandelier is creepy. But I really love the parts of the book that talk about like silk weaving and silkworms and honeybees and wax. That whole section about how we have worked together to make things easier for all of us. But I guess this is the author on page 63.
Yes.
It says, two of my alter egos with garb from a clandestine armory of hive helmets, placing a recycled bike helmet into one of my honeybee hives. The workers built comb until I extracted the helmet and modify. The winged helmet includes plexiglass wings, beeswax, and insect pins for Hymenoptera defining hooks called hamuli, not pictured in this early version. So he makes hive helmets.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. And then, of course, if you have a book about everything entomology, if you don't quote Edward Wilson, the premier entomologist of our generation, and he does, and he's talking about ants, he says, as an entomologist who has spent most of his career on hands and knees studying the highly organized and super efficient colonies of ants, I am often asked the following question: what can human beings learn from these insects? And the answer I give, with my fingers steepled, my mouth pursed, and my eyes squinted, is nothing. Not a thing, and it would be a major Aesopian error to believe otherwise. And that was Edward O. Wilson. But then he also quotes the Bible from Proverbs, chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. While having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest.
Okay.
So we can learn
a lot
from
of
these.
people use insects as the basis of their art, but they also make things that look like insects. But I think the architecture series, which starts on 238, is very interesting about how they've designed certain things based upon insect buildings of their own and geodesic domes, things like that, certain spans of bridges, all kinds of different things. Some things look more insect-like and some don't. It's an interesting book. And if you're into insects, I think this is your book, man. I like insects now. It's taken me a long time to get there. I'm now working on snakes, learning to appreciate snakes.
Yeah.
But and I'm not finding it as hard as I did when I first did insects, because insects kind of bothered me.
Well, what you need is what I had in college, which is a very enthusiastic entomology professor. Just this guy, and he used to go, and when you go looking for plants, you're botanizing. I don't know what
Which is
called.
What I like to do.
I don't know what is called when you go down to Central and South America looking for insects. I don't know exactly what they call that. It's not insecticizing, but he would spend summers down in South America collecting insects and stuff, and his enthusiasm for them, it kind of made you think, oh, okay, because at first you're like, I've just taken an entomology class. Let me just get through this class.
Well, they're fascinating.
They are fascinating. I actually took a second one because I'm like, well, that was pretty fun. Let's do this other one. So
yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, I find them absolutely fascinating anymore. And remember that couple that was down, weren't they in Arizona? And they had done insect collections from all over the world. I mean,
they had the world's largest, was it the world's largest weevil collection?
Weevils or beetles? I don't remember. Anyway, their collection has gone on to, I think, Arizona State University, but it might be Arizona University.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we did that as dirt a while back.
Yeah, it was an amazing place. So they made me kind of love insects because there's a documentary about them. And you're right, their enthusiasm made me love them. And the truth is I don't go out to purposely kill them, except ticks. I feel like ticks, I love other spiders, but ticks are the bad spiders of the spider world.
Yes. So let me wrap this up. Let me wrap this up. That says, insects surround us. They fuel life on Earth through their role as pollinators, predators, and prey. But rarely do we consider the outsized influence they have had on our culture and civilization. Their anatomy and habits inform how we live, work, create art, and innovate. The book features nearly 250 color images, from ancient etchings to avant-garde art, from bug-based meals to haute couture. The Insect Epiphany proves that our world would look very different without insects, not just because they are crucial to our ecosystems, but because they have shaped and inspired so many aspects of what makes us human. There you go. The Insect Epiphany.
And there was a honeybee on the outside of my window as you were talking, and she was flying against the glass, just testing the glass to see if she should come in. And the other day I went to lunch with my friend Denise, and we were at Plant in Oklahoma City, and a honeybee got inside, and they don't like to be inside. They want immediately back out. And so the only dark place they like is their hive. And between Denise and I, we got that little honeybee outside and let her go. And that was fun.
That was fun. So anyway, that's the Insect Epiphany, How Our Six-Legged Allies Shape Human Culture by Barrett Klein. And I don't know if this is nighttime reading because, like you said, you can kind of get creeped out by insects, but it is definitely interesting reading. And
it is interesting reading.
For interesting reading.
Yeah, not a bedside book.
Do the
Next
quote.
quote.
Let's do the dirt.
The art of happiness lies in the power of extracting happiness from common things. Henry Ward Beecher. And our dirt you found some time ago,
I did.
and you have really expanded on it since you and I last talked about it.
Not much expanded on it, but I found that the tattoo artist, now musician, Kat Von D, and I didn't really know who she was because I don't watch the tattoo shows.
She also has her own cosmetics line.
In 21, I think it was, she saw a big Victorian house for sale in a little tiny town called Vevey, Indiana. Vavay, pronounced Vevey, down in way down in southern Indiana, kind of down by Louisville. And she bought it, and she's been refurbishing it, and she lives there in this little tiny Vevey, Indiana. But what
she does, she moved away from Hollywood and stuff, and she also, if I remember right, she covered up some of her tattoos, and she kind of changed her whole life. Like in 2013, she became a vegan and an animal rights activist. And like when she did that switch, she like changed everything. And then she kept talk about somebody who's had an epiphany or
metamorphosis,
something like that, then she's definitely one of those who's done it. Sorry, my Siri decided to come on right in the middle of all that for no reason at all. It just does that now.
Well, the reason we brought it up for Creepy October is she's also known for always wearing black. And she has an all black garden. And so you found on Instagram where she had planted a field of black tulips across from her house.
Yeah.
And invited people to come by and see it.
I've done black tulips too. I mean, I've done black and pink together before. And boy, that looked great. That was pretty cool. Yeah. In fact, she has a giant field full of them, and she's asked people not to pick them, that it's across the street from her house.
Right. And so she's enjoying hanging out and becoming Hoosier, as they say. At the time the article was written, which is 22, I think, she had a 3-year-old, so he would be 5, 6 years old now. But anyway, what do you think about all black gardens, Dee?
I think they would lack dimension, personally. I like black plants, don't get me wrong, which is really dark purple. There is no true black. So it's dark, dark purple. And one of the first articles I wrote for one of those groups that we wrote for, I don't remember, it's been a while, was about black gardens, and it was for Halloween and, all the black plants you can find. And there's been a couple of books that have come out on black plants.
Right. I have one of them, Black Flowers.
That topic got really popular for a while, and that's kind of, backed off a little bit. I like some black things. I like dark purple. I like that. Yeah. I like that it shows up shadows and stuff like that, but I wouldn't want an all black garden. There's too many other great colors.
There are, but if I might take a little section and make with all black flowers and stuff, but I kind of feel like I need to be like next to a cemetery, and I want, old Victorian wrought iron railing around it. It would have a certain look.
It would definitely have a certain look, and I care too much about pollinators. They aren't as attracted to dark purple plants as they are other things. So I'll just keep doing my composites in yellow.
You do that. And I feel like we're having the debate. And I took the pro black flower garden, and you took
which is so unlikely, because you're the least likely person to do.
Neither one of us. I'd be more likely to plant a garden with all green flowers.
Yes, exactly. You want to do
that was our dirt. It's like if you got to look in a way, lean into it, Kat. Lean into it.
I think she's covered up, unless something's changed. I haven't looked her up in the last 5 minutes, but she covered up most of her tattoos with black. So now because it's less expensive. I looked it up one time because I was curious about it and went down that rabbit hole. And she didn't like some of the imagery that she had put on her body, because she went more toward a Christian ethic, and she used to have more of I don't want to say Satanist, but just, let's say, witchcrafty. I don't know. But for whatever reason, she didn't think that those tattoos were what she wanted on her body anymore. Well, it's expensive to get them lasered off, and it's painful, I think. And so, because it creates a sore. So, and she had so many of them. So she just took black and tattooed black. So she has black down her arms and stuff. Not my thing, but it kind of goes with her garden.
No, not my thing either. But yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, that was our dirt for creepy October. Not that cat is creepy, but just all black flowers is kind of
No,
creepy.
no, she's not creepy at all. I mean, well, maybe she is. I don't know. I don't know too much about her. I feel like I've wandered into something I really don't want to be a part of. I'm looking at her tattoos right now on Instagram,
Uh-huh.
and she said, read my caption before commenting, please. I'm so happy with how this blackout tattooing by this tattoo artist is coming together. Today, we have knocked out my entire upper thigh all the way to my rear end, which I would share with you guys the entire tattoo, but you know, I always like to keep it PG and said, don't criticize, basically. So her left leg is now a black, what they call a blackout. All right, moving on.
Moving on. I'll do a quote and we'll go down into our rabbit holes.
Okay.
Come and walk a while with me and share the twisting trails and wondrous worlds I've known. Shel Silverstein.
So you want to do yours first and then I'll do mine?
Sure. So I had a tiny rabbit hole last week, 2 days ago. For a lost lady of garden run, I'm like, who? I hadn't done any research in a while, but I did Jane Eyre Fryer, and her maiden name was Eayre, which I'm assuming is pronounced Eyre. So her
Yeah.
parents' name were Jane Eyre, which is,
Yeah.
But anyway, I found a book on sewing of all things when I was doing a search for something else that was written in the early 1900s. So I sent it to my sister who sews and said, you should get this so you can sew with your granddaughters. And she was known for taking subjects like sewing, crocheting, knitting, first aid, keeping house. And she would write a story. And then through the story, she would teach about that subject. And so I found out that she wrote a gardening book.
Really?
The Mary Frances Garden Book is what it's called. And it's a story about these two kids, a brother and sister, and putting together a garden. Pretty comprehensive information. It came out in the 1910s. Pretty comprehensive. It even showed how to graft a tree.
Wow. That's impressive. Very
So I was
impressive.
impressed by that. And then the other rabbit hole I went down just ever so briefly was a while back. I had some VH tapes that my cousin had recorded my grandmother talking and a family reunion and the other side of the family. I sent those to a digital scanning place, and then they scanned those so that I would have them digitally. And now I have them in Dropbox so that I can share them with all my cousins. So I've been watching my grandmother talk about the olden days, stuff that she recorded in 1982 when she was 77 years old. And I sent links to my sisters and brother and my cousins, and now everybody's enjoying them.
Hey, Carol, that is really cool. So I'm going to tell you about my rabbit hole now. So I've been walking with Tommy Rivs in the Canary Islands on my iFit on my treadmill. I'm back walking. And so he brought up a tree that he called the dragon tree, which is native to the Canary Islands. And he said it's, I may not pronounce this right, Draciana Draco. And so Draciana, when I said it to you, you go, oh yeah, the house plant.
Yeah.
Which it is a house plant. That genus is a house plant, but it's a huge, giant tree in the Canary Islands. And it would have made, and so I went down this big rabbit hole because one of the things he said as we were walking, because he's a really smart guy, he said, this tree bleeds red. Its sap is red. And I was like, well, what? Which we could have probably used this in dirt, but it really was my rabbit hole. So I went and looked it up, and by golly, it does. Its sap has a red tint. So when they cut it for wood or whatever, it looks like blood dripping down the tree inside. And it's just kind of weird. But people grow them all the time as houseplants because they grow really slowly and they're easy to grow.
Yeah, I have one that was included in a planter in a funeral planter that somebody sent when my mother died. So that would have been 2011. And then my sister had it and she said, will you take this? And it's probably 3 feet tall now. So
that's a long time ago.
I was tempted to go and nick it and see if I could get some sap. But then I thought, oh, it struggles along anyway with my.
Yeah, it doesn't really love our weather. So it's a Mediterranean tree. It grows in Spain. And it's just a really interesting, it's a gum, it's a red gum and it's sap. And actually, I don't know if we'll link to it or not, but I found where you can grow it indoors. Although I've had them, I just never thought of them. They're great big huge trees. Like they have this big, big trunk. And
They
then
can be.
like umbrellas. And we walked past tons of them. And I was like, this is a cool thing for a rabbit hole. So
It
they
is
get
now
huge.
it's like I said, it's about 3 feet tall. Now you look
Yeah.
behind me, I've got this bird of paradise plant. It's pretty big.
Yeah. You grow some really wild plants and you actually get it. I'm not very good with house plants, so I kill them regularly.
But I will also say this reminds me of the native wildflower bloodroot, which is called that because when you
Doesn't
cut
the root have sap? That's
if you dig up the root and then crack it in half, it'll bleed red. And the Native Americans used to use that to make war paint.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So there you go. It's been an interesting week, hasn't it?
It has been an interesting week. We are moving on to our garden commissions.
Okay, well, I'll do mine really fast. I'm speaking tomorrow. We're recording this on Thursday. I'm speaking on Friday to the statewide master gardeners.
Good luck.
And I have to get it. Thank you. I have to get up really early. I have to get up at 5:30, which, as Carol knows, I am not an early morning person.
Nope.
Get in my car and drive, well, throw on clothes, and then drive an hour and a half to Enid. And then I speak at 8:00. So
that is early.
8:00 and 9:00, and then I'm done for the day.
And then what else is going on in your garden next week?
Anything? Linda's coming next week. Linda Vatter's coming on October 10th, and she's going to film. We'll see if there's anything left to film. I don't know.
I bet she can find some pretty good stuff.
It's pretty tired.
So in my garden, the grass is growing ever so fast now because it's gotten cool. I mowed on Monday. I think I'm going to mow again tomorrow on Friday. I'm going to do more cleanup. And then outside of the garden, the library served up the book, The Examiner by Janice Hallett, that I have been waiting for ever since I knew she had a new book coming out. She writes those epistolary mysteries where it's told as an exchange of emails or WhatsApp conversations back and forth. I
don't even know who she is.
Oh my gosh, I just love. She's written some really, really good mysteries. She's British, but they're epistolary. So
yeah. Which is your
they're
thing.
Very good. Plus, I have one more Christmas project other than the video that I made or the digital videos of my family stuff. And I've given myself October. If I don't make a good dent in October, then I'm going to have to probably set it aside for next year because it's kind of a big project. Wish me luck.
I will wish you luck. Shall we wrap it up?
We will wrap it up. Thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. I hope you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern Time.
But if you subscribe to our free Substack newsletter, you get a link to listen to the podcast one whole day early.
And if you want to help support us, use our affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we're in a small commission and it costs you nothing.
Or you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout or make a one-time donation through PayPal.
Thank you to everyone who has done so. It helps us pay for podcast hosting.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.